Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I'm going to be reviewing and paging through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay The Horned Rat from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. Is this fourth chapter in the director's cut of the Enemy Within campaign a must-own for WFRP game masters everywhere? Or is something rotten in Middenheim? So much so that you'll want to give this adventure a wide berth as you take a pass. Where you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today I will be reviewing and paging through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay The Horned Rat from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. This 160-page hardcover does carry an MSRP of $39.99, which will include the PDF if you purchase it from Cubicle 7 or one of their brick-and-mortar partners. If you want just the PDF alone, you can grab that over at DriveThruRPG for $19.99. All right, that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Horned Rat. Do want to mention, I have a sinus infection going on. In fact, if you caught any of the live streams this past week, you'll notice my voice was off. I was all stuffed up. Still got it. Hasn't gone away. So my voice is a bit more nasally than it usually would be. Of course, I have a voice for television and a face for radio. I love how that works. Anyway, the fine folks over at Cubicle 7 Entertainment were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But keep in mind, neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's important that you know that. Also, as usual, I'm going to say picture-in-picture up here. So that means as we take a peek through, I'm going to be cutting off a little bit of the upper left portion of the book. We're not going to look at each and every page, but I do want to give you a very good feel for what you'll find in The Horned Rat. Also, got to keep in mind, this is an adventure. So here there be spoilers. Of course, I try to stay away from tons and tons of spoilers, but it's an adventure review. I have to share things that go on in the adventure. So if you are a player hoping that your game master is going to run The Horned Rat, or maybe is currently running the Enemy Within director's cut, by all means, I would certainly recommend tune out now. Don't ruin the surprise, all the fun that's going to happen in this adventure just because you hung out watching the review. All right, hopefully it's just Game Masters and I now. So let's take a look at the back here. My friends in change, we have sown glorious chaos, but to bring the time of changes, we must act as one under a champion in shadows. The Horned Rat is the fourth volume of the revised and updated director's cut of The Enemy Within, one of the most highly regarded role-playing campaigns ever written. Building on the dramatic events at the end of Power Behind the Throne, recruiting your brave heroes into the service of the city of Middenheim for more drama and intrigue. In the penultimate volume of the 5-part series of grim and perilous Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventures, the tables are turned as enemies that have pursued the characters since the beginning of the epic campaign are forced to defend themselves. The time is right to uncover their schemes and break apart their organization. The characters cannot afford to relax their guard and celebrate their victories as a new threat emerges from beneath their feet. Let's dive on in. So, of course, we get our map of the city of Middenheim, the fortress city of Ulrich. One item that I had noticed is there are a lot of writing credits and illustrator credits in this adventure book. I think these are the most writing credits I have ever seen in a 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventure. Of course, Graham Davis is the lead once again, and of course, Graham Davis worked on the original Enemy Within campaign. So, very cool to see he's still involved. I've interviewed him a couple of times. Very nice guy. Very interesting person as well. So, this is going to pick up from where Power Behind the Throne ended. Now, one other aspect, if you've been running this campaign, an aspect that you're going to notice with this book is there are no grognard boxes, those gray boxes that give you some options as far as different things that can take place in the adventure in case you have players who've already played through Enemy Within, or maybe you've read Enemy Within, the earlier editions. They're not here because this isn't a revised adventure. The 4th chapter of the original Enemy Within is Something Rotten in Kislev. I've never read it. I got to be honest, I've never read the original Enemy Within at all. But I do understand with a lot of players, it was one of their least favorite chapters of Enemy Within. In fact, probably the least favorite. Although I do know there were gamers out there who also talk about how the conclusion of Enemy Within originally was a little bit of a letdown. I don't think we're going to see that happen this time around. But I thought it was very interesting that this is all pretty much new. There's no adventure in Kislev at all. So, as I mentioned, this is going to pick up from where we left off in Power Behind the Throne. So, in that adventure, the player characters had foiled a plot to replace the Graf of Middenheim with a doppelganger who had been groomed to replace him. So the player characters, they're rising in the world. So they're not just, murder hobos on the road, but they're not nobility either. But people know of them. They're little movers and shakers now, which I think is very cool how that's come about through the adventure. Something else we're going to see is the introduction of the Skaven as our big bads in this adventure. We've had a little foreshadowing prior with Skaven. And of course, if you're not overly familiar with the old world of Warhammer, which I'll be the first to admit, all I know is really from what I've read in WFRP 4th edition. I don't have a really strong background in all things Warhammer. But one of the aspects of the Skaven I think are pretty interesting is that people don't want to believe in them. So they are these rat men. They have a society. They're intelligent. They can speak. They have their own language. Some of them can also, speak kind of like the common tongue, the Reichländer tongue. And people everywhere just do not want to believe that they exist. And one of the aspects of this adventure is going to be the player characters gathering evidence and proof of the existence of the Skaven. And of course, against them are the Skaven themselves, as well as a cult that is working with the Skaven, and they are the Yellow Fang. On top of the Purple Hand, which is the chaos cult that the player characters have been dealing with since the first chapter, Enemy in Shadows. So there are a lot of different factions. There are a lot of plot twists. There is a ton going on in this adventure. And a game master has to be prepared for all the various different angles that things can go. This is not extremely linear, especially early on. There are a lot of different directions the players can go because they're going to be encountering different things. They might be stumbling upon other avenues as well. One thing that's going to take place a lot in this adventure is investigation. And essentially what happens is the player characters become agents of the Middenheim Watch. They're almost agents of the Graf himself, but they actually answer to the captain of the watch, and he is a solid ally for the player characters to utilize. So all these different things are going on kind of at the same time. Now, thankfully, you don't have to sit there and worry about specific timelines for everything. I know there are some Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventures where timing and things going on simultaneously are very important to really pull the adventures off. They tend to be one-shot adventures, not, campaign-wise. Thankfully, that's not taking place here because you've already got so many things that you'll be juggling. So what I would recommend with all the various different encounters and threads that the player characters could be following, try to have 3 main things going on. Have no more than that, because you'll certainly kind of get tangled up with all the different NPCs and so on and so forth. So the player characters are not only trying to track down other members of at least Middenheim's Purple Hand, but they're also learning about the presence of the Skaven, and they're investigating the Undercity below Middenheim. There are some very cool encounters here. There's a lot of different kind of angles that you can utilize as well. There's a lot of window dressing that you can use to kind of make this story kind of your own. If you want to make it really creepy and scary, you can. If you want to make it a little more grim and dark, you can as well. If you want to go a little lighter, there are some aspects of the adventure as well that you can focus on to kind of keep things lighthearted. Of course, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is a grim and perilous world. But one aspect that I love about the system itself, and just about all the adventures that I've had an opportunity to check out, there's always a little bit of a sense of humor there. There's always going to be opportunities for some laughter at the table, which always works, because you don't want just constant, just drumming of, grim, downer, things like that. Talking about investigations, another aspect I really like about Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and I've kind of talked about this in some of my recent reviews for Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and Starfinder, there is investigation. The players themselves are expected to come up with some answers. It is not just, oh, well, I've got this skill. Let me roll this die. Oh, I succeeded. And now the game master is going to tell me everything. That does not take place. Now, that doesn't mean that you're looking at a Call of Cthulhu adventure where the players don't figure things out or they don't happen to encounter specific clues. They're going to be lost. No, that's not taking place at all. But I love the fact that all the investigating, all the mysteries are not solved by just rolling dice and handing the information to the players. And that is a very old school theme. And there is a bit of the OSR that does run through, at least the vibe of the OSR that runs through Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay as well. So eventually what's going to happen is the player characters are going to start convincing people that, yes, something is amiss. Maybe there really are these rat things, these rat men. And the player characters are going to end up being tasked to head to the north, not necessarily far north, but they're going to go to the north. They're going to go to the area where the forces of the Empire try to keep the forces of chaos at bay, they keep there. And the Purple Hand has their fingers in that pie, as does the Yellow Fang, and I find that very interesting as well. There's some stuff going to be going on. There's a battle that's going to erupt that the player characters are not really part of. They're witness to, although the aftermath they kind of get caught up in. And as presented, it could be just a blast for your player characters, because on one hand, they're going to think it's the forces of chaos coming to attack them. Not necessarily going to be the case. Something else I do want to point out, there can be some pretty grisly scenes to this adventure. There are many of the Skaven are starving, and they'll just jump on top of wounded Skaven and start eating them. And you kind of want to push that home, but all depends on your group. I mean, you could get really disgusting about it, or you can just kind of touch on that as well. Eventually, what's going to happen is the player characters are going to learn of this warpstone cannon that the Skaven have been working on. There is the big bad Skaven, and he wants to shoot it at the Chaos Moon. So the world of Warhammer, there are two moons. There's just a kind of a regular silver moon, and then there's the weird green Chaos Moon, where the chaos-tainted warpstone originates in meteors. And so the game plan is to blow up the moon. And then all that warpstone is going to come falling onto the old world, probably going to kill a lot of the non-chaos and non-Skaven. And of course, this big bad figures, oh, well, they're going to collect as much warpstone as they can, and he's going to become the leader of all Skaven, or at least become a member of the ruling council of Skaven. So an aspect of the warpstone cannon that I find kind of interesting is that it's actually in a complex that the player characters are going to have to infiltrate. And of course, they need to find a way to stop this warp cannon, so they can sabotage it. They can try to kill the big bad. There's a variety of different ways that they can go about just throwing a wrench, or I guess on the other side of the pond, a spanner into the works. And one of the aspects I thought is pretty funny, and it seems to be kind of a wink and a nod to old Bond films, is what happens after the player characters destroy or stop this warpstone cannon. And it's kind of funny. I would definitely recommend game masters out there to throw on the James Bond music when the earlier, Bond films like Dr. No, when there's the big battle, even like Goldfinger, there's that big battle at the end. And it's funny, all I kept thinking of is the ending of Dr. No, when all the henchmen in that are trying to flee the complex as it's going up. Well, that's what's going to be taking place here as well. So, as I mentioned before, there is tons and tons going on in this adventure. And I do want to point out that it is more geared towards investigating, kind of being stealthy. Now, not to say there aren't plenty of opportunities for combat, but of course, if you're familiar with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th Edition, you already know combat is very deadly. So player characters don't want to just be, running around like this is a game of D&D or Pathfinder, because even with a lot of experience, their characters are still relatively squishy. It's not that difficult to take down an experienced character. Of course, you got your critical hits, things like that. So something to keep in mind also. So we're going to get some handouts. We've got quite a few handouts in here for the players to utilize. Kind of give you an idea. And of course, there is the Middenheim City of the White Wolf supplement that will come in handy if you already own it. I would say if you don't have it and, you don't want to, have all these supplements, things like that, I don't think it's critical for you to have the Middenheim supplement for you to run both Power Behind the Throne as well as the first half or more of the Horned Rat. All right, so there's a look at the Horned Rat. Let's swing on over to the other camera because I'm going to share some final thoughts as well as my review score. So if you've been following along any of my reviews of the Enemy Within Director's Cut, I have enjoyed these tremendously. I really, really have. They are loads of fun. I could really see, at least the players that I run role-playing games for have just a blast. And it's always very interesting because even though there is some linear format to especially the second half of the Horned Rat, it never makes the players feel like they're on rails, ever. They always feel like they've got agency and that they're the ones making the choices of where they're going, what they're doing. Now, granted, as in all role-playing games, all adventures, sometimes the players go off track and you got to kind of swing them back around. But at no point in any of these first 4 chapters of the campaign has it been really, really linear. I love that. I also love the fact that the investigations are investigations. The players are not going to solve these mysteries simply by rolling dice and what's on their character sheet. Now, there are some tips and tricks within as well in case your player characters kind of get stuck. But I love the sense of accomplishment your players are going to have when they figure out a lot of these things, when they tie up these different loose ends together, when they figure out what these codes are that they're going to run across as well. Definitely love that. Also, there are some very cool NPCs. The player characters are coming up in the world, which I love that as well. In fact, by the end of this adventure, they're going to be very well regarded in many areas of the Empire. So I like that, how they started off as nobodies. They're still not nobility unless they started off as nobility. But they are kind of movers and shakers in the old world. And I love that about the campaign and this adventure itself as well. There's tons going on. I got to say that you are going to have many, many sessions of enjoyment with the Horned Rat. Even though it's 160 pages, that may not be a lot for some people out there. It is packed with gaming goodness. I got to admit, I'm going to start running Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and I am going to be running The Enemy Within. I decided that about a week ago. So tune into the live stream. I'll probably talk about it once we finally sit down and start playing. Anyway, on a score of 0 to 10, I give the Horned Rat a 10 out of 10. I think it is that good. It is, I don't know if I can say it's my favorite chapter so far in Enemy Within, because I really like Death on the Reich a lot, because there's like some really spooky stuff going on in that too. So I think it's fantastic though. So a 10 out of 10, it is that good. It is a must own if you have any interest whatsoever in running Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and Enemy Within. One thing I will mention, there is some discussion of possibly running the Horned Rat as just a standalone. The first half of the adventure, I don't really see would work well. Yeah, the Horned Rat portion of it with the Warpstone cannon and things like that. Yeah, I could see that being a one-off or putting it into your own campaign. But honestly, to get the most out of the Horned Rat, you really do want to be running the director's cut of Enemy Within. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It will not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, I'll also tell you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings, 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find on the YouTube channel. All right, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for watching. And of course, until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.
Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel by clicking right here. Check out the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, or find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks for watching.